Hello, I'm Anuradha. In this presentation, I will discuss the development of a large-scale motivational interviewing dataset using online peer support forums. This work was done in collaboration with Dr. Pearl Pu. We are from the HCI group at EPFL, Switzerland. According to World Health Organization estimates, psychological distress affects 29% of people in their lifetime. However, the National Council for Mental Well-being reports 77% of counties in the US alone are experiencing a severe shortage of mental health providers. Because of the lack of mental health professionals to cater to this increasing demand, chatbots that can offer therapeutic support is seen as an interesting area of research. As Mary Skaminsky from Microsoft put it, about 1 billion people globally are affected by mental disorders. A scalable solution such as an AI therapist could be a huge boon. Therapeutic chatbots such as Visa, Woobot, Elomia, Dipsy, and Emma are recent examples. However, please stay tuned until the end of the talk to learn some of the ethical challenges we face with such chatbots. One of the major limitations faced by researchers when developing such chatbots is the lack of high-quality, large-scale datasets containing dialogues between distressed people and mental health workers. Such datasets are often not exposed to the community due to privacy and ethical reasons. A workaround researchers have adapted is scraping such conversational data from peer support platforms such as Reddit, because people nowadays increasingly sort to online platforms to vent their distress, and peers with similar experience largely support these people to overcome their distress. This has become an alternative mainly because such dialogues are publicly available in abundance and allow scraping through web APIs. They are also found to contain high empathic concern as many peers share similar distressful experiences. But the fact that peers are not professionally trained in distress support makes using such datasets very risky, and the extent to which responses from peers align with responses from trained counselors is largely understudied. We attempt to address this gap by developing a dataset with dialogues containing responses from professional counselors and from peers, and try to comparatively analyze the similarities and differences between these different types of responses by annotating them with labels derived from the Motivational Treatment Integrity Code, commonly known as MITI. The MITI code is used by psychologists to evaluate how well a mental health provider responds. For dialogues between emotionally distressed people and counselors, we use a subset of 1,000 dialogues from the Counsel Chat dataset that contains around 2,000 post-response pairs scraped from the Counsel Chat website. And for dialogues between distressed people and peers, we use a subset of 1,000 dialogues from the Reddit Emotional Distress or RED dataset that contains around 1.3 million conversations scraped from the mental health-related subreddits. Here we show the labels that we adapted from MITI code versions 2.0 and 4.2.1. First, we have closed question, open question, simple reflection, complex reflection, and give information, which are generally considered as favorable response types in dialogues concerning mental health. And then we have specific MI-adherent behavior codes such as advise with permission, affirm, emphasize autonomy, and support. Next, it indicates what are MI non-adherent behavior codes which are considered unfavorable response types in mental health discourse and should be avoided. They are advise without permission, confront, direct, and warn. After that, we ourselves included the labels self-disclose and other. Self-disclosure in particular is not an explicit label in the MITI code. However, it was included because in peer support dialogue, self-disclosure is seen frequently and is considered important as it enables sharing their own experience. We conducted the annotation experiment mainly in 3 stages. In the first stage, we asked 2 professional workers to annotate the listener responses with MITI codes. In the second stage, we asked workers who performed well in the previous stage to act as judges to resolve the conflicting labels resulted from the first stage. In the third stage, we removed the labels given by poorly performed workers, considering them as noise, and asked the judges to resolve the still remaining conflicting labels. In the next slides, we discuss how the professionals are recruited and how they are assigned to different tasks. At the beginning of the experiment, we recruited 12 professional counselors from the crowdsourcing platform Upwork, and we asked them to label close to 17,000 listener sentences appearing in 1,000 dialogues from Counsel Chat and 1,000 dialogues from Red. We bundled 10 such dialogues into one batch and asked 2 workers to annotate each batch. At the end of stage 1, we were not able to obtain a label agreed upon by both workers for more than half of the listeners' sentences. But we saw that the majority of disagreements occurred because there were inherently difficult pairs of labels to distinguish. As you can see here, because these pairs either contained similar semantic content or used similar language constructs. So we asked for best performing workers discovered from the previous stage to act as judges to resolve the conflicting labels. The best performing workers were selected based on the high observed agreement rates they obtained with peer workers. At the end of stage 2, there were still close to 12% unresolved labels, and out of them we discovered close to 68% of the labels were given by relatively poorly performed workers whose observed agreement score was below average. And at stage 3, we removed such noisy annotations and asked the judges to resolve the remaining conflicting labels similar to stage 2. This table summarizes the end results from the annotation experiment. We were able to get in total close to 16,000 sentences annotated. And as you can see, the observed agreement percentage between the workers increased over the stages. The same increase can be observed with the inter-rater agreement as measured by Fleischkamp. Here I will show you 2 example dialogues that were annotated, one from Counsel Chat and the other from Red. As you can see, we group together the sentences that appear one after another and tag them with one label. Next, we will move into analysis and recommendations. Here we show the distribution of MITI labels in dialogues from Counsel Chat and Red datasets. As you can see, there are some significant differences with respect to some key labels such as give information, self-disclosure, advise with and without permission, and support. Whereas more subtle differences were observed with respect to questions, reflections, affirmations, emphasizing autonomy, and other MI non-adherent behavior codes. We will elaborate on these next. Considering different types of questions that appear in Counsel Chat and Red, we could observe a 23% increase in closed questions and a 25% increase in open questions in responses from counselors compared to those from peers. Questions contribute to building mutual dialogue between speaker and the listener, but it is found that closed questions are less helpful because speakers tend to talk less when you ask a closed question rather than an open question. But in both Counsel Chat and Red datasets, we observed open questions are nearly as half as closed questions. This is not a good indication of continued interaction. So we recommend steps should be taken to boost the number of open questions to balance the number of closed questions. We think this combination is more effective than disproportionately relying on closed questions. When it comes to reflections, both simple reflections and complex reflections show increases by 20% and 30% respectively in Counsel Chat compared to Red. Reflections are found to be positively associated with perceived empathy. So we recommend that both simple and complex reflections should be boosted more in peers' responses. Further, scholars such as COLING' emphasize that more reflections should be formulated than closed questions. And we even notice that some of the closed questions such as "Are you eating because you are bored?" can easily be converted to reflections such as "It seems that you are eating because you are bored." This is simply by changing the voice intonation at the end. So we further recommend such reformulations. Given information type of responses are seen to increase by 200% in counsel chat compared to read. This observation is quite unsurprising because counselors are comparatively very knowledgeable. So we recommend that ways should be explored to increase the amount of information in peers' responses if they are used to train therapeutic chatbots. Considering advice with and without permission, giving advices is generally seen to be much higher in counselor responses compared to those from peers. Advising with permission occupied a portion close to 77% among all the advices given by counselors. But this percentage is much higher among the peers. So it is highly recommended that steps should be taken to reformulate these advice without permission type responses into advice with permission. This in some cases could be done by simple methods such as template replacement. Future work can also explore application of text-style transfer methods with regard to this aspect. Considering MI adherent behavior codes, supporting speakers by showing compassion and sympathy is surprisingly higher by 95% among peers. Affirming the speaker by encouraging them or saying something positive is also higher among peers. This emphasizes that peers' responses, if used in training chatbots, may reflect more compassion, sympathy, positivity, and compliments towards the speaker in distress. However, they still need boosting when it comes to emphasizing autonomy of the speaker. Regarding MI non-adherent behavior codes, confronting the client by disagreeing or arguing or criticizing is observed to be higher among peers. Surprisingly, directing the speaker by giving orders and also warnings are higher among counselor responses than those from peers. Such responses can negatively affect therapeutic interactions because they reflect uneven power sharing. So we recommend such responses to be eliminated when using such data to train such chatbots. Self-disclosure is observed to show a significant increase close to 600% in peers' responses compared to counselors. In the literature, there is particularly a blurry view on self-disclosure because psychoanalysts believe self-disclosure is counterproductive because it distorts clients' transference. But cognitive behavioral therapists, in contrast, believe self-disclosure can be useful as it reinforces new perspectives for the client. Digging deep, there are two types of self-disclosure: intra-session disclosure and extra-session disclosure. Intra-session disclosure is about revealing a feeling that is relevant to the therapeutic process. Extra-session disclosure is about revealing information about themselves that occur outside the session. In most cases, intra-session disclosure is found to be the most useful type of self-disclosure. As we manually inspected our results, we observed intra-session disclosure type responses are the ones mostly seen in counsel chat, whereas extra-session disclosure type responses are mostly seen in red. Extra-session disclosure can also contribute to building rapport among the speaker and the listener, but it should be used wisely because it can also distort the speaker's transference. In conclusion, in this study, we conducted an MITI annotation experiment annotating close to 17,000 responses from both professional counselors and peers for online distress prompts. We discussed this annotation process in detail that increased the agreement between workers over 3 stages, contributing to a label coverage of 97% of the dataset. Using the annotated MI dataset, we conducted a comparative analysis between the responses from counselors and from peers that led us into giving useful recommendations on how peers' responses can be rephrased or further processed to reduce the risk of them being utilized in building supportive chatbots. Finally, we urge you to look at the ethical consideration section in our paper because development of therapeutic chatbot with the use of this dataset can involve certain risk when deployed in real-world environments. Especially generative models carry a risk when delivering emotional support because of their inherent unpredictability. So real-world deployment of such applications may still need to be done under human supervision. With that, I'm concluding my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer any questions.